Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take the stacks of sources you provide, the articles, the deep research, your personal notes, and
Yeah.
we turn them into instant, clear, foundational knowledge.
Hmm.
If you're navigating a world that, let's be honest, often feels chaotic and unmoored, you know the value of finding true anchors. We're here to help you gain that knowledge and to do it quickly but thoroughly.
And today we're dedicating this entire deep dive to a single, really powerful piece of ancient Hebrew wisdom, Psalm 97.
There's just one.
Just one. And the sources you shared, which include some just fascinating detailed commentary, they frame this ancient text not as mere historical poetry, but as a dynamic living declaration of a present operative reality.
A present reality.
Yes, this psalm is meant to anchor the belief of anyone living in a world that feels confused or, seemingly out of control.
And that's really the core mission here. We're going to try and extract the profound theological insights, study the absolutely stunning and frankly sometimes terrifying imagery of God's rule and judgment.
Definitely.
And then most critically, figure out how a modern believer applies these non-negotiable truths when navigating the daily pressures of life. This isn't theory.
Wow.
This is clarity designed to withstand confusion.
It truly is. This psalm, it kind of bypasses the small talk and goes straight to the ultimate truth, a foundational fact that really everything else in the universe rests on.
Okay, before we dive headfirst into that truth, let's just pause for a moment to acknowledge this deep dive is proudly brought to you by the You Need Faith in Jesus team.
Thank you. And that ankle truth, the gravitational center of the entire psalm, is laid out immediately and dramatically in the opening phrase of verse 1.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're starting with what has to be the boldest, most non-negotiable proclamation the ancient world could even conceive of. This is the absolute premise that structures the entire worldview of the psalmist.
We have to begin here because this is the foundation of all true order, peace, and security. And it really challenges the fundamental assumptions we all make about power.
So give us the full KJV verse. The language itself is, it's just so commanding in its simplicity.
It is, the Lord reigneth. Let the earth rejoice. Let the multitude of isles be glad thereof.
The Lord reigneth. That opening phrase it's just so crucial. The notes you provided really emphasize that in the original Hebrew, the verb form used here, melech, it's not future tense like a hope.
Right, or past tense like a memory.
Exactly. It's what's called a perfect participle. It speaks of a state of being, a reality that is established and continuous. This is a present reality. God is the reigning king right now.
That is the essential insight. That's what transforms a song from just poetry into prophecy and application. The commentary really stresses that if you need a singular comforting truth to counter every form of anxiety, it is this. God's sovereignty is not suspended. It's not waiting for some grand future inauguration, though that is coming. No, it is active and complete in this very moment.
So when we look at, say, global events or grapple with personal suffering, or the news cycle just feels completely random and chaotic.
Yes, our intellectual, our emotional, and our spiritual starting point must always be the king is on the throne, and his rule is absolute.
That challenges a common misconception, doesn't it? I mean, often we act like the throne is empty and God is just sort of observing until the end of time.
We do, but the psalmist insists he is actively reigning, governing, and ordering events.
Okay, and then that authority is immediately shown to be universal in the very next line.
He is.
Yeah.
And that authority, it's immediately shown to be universal. Let the earth rejoice. Let the multitude of isles be glad thereof. I found the scope of rule here so powerful. For the ancient world, the isles, or coastlands.
That was the edge of the map, right?
That was the edge of the map. They symbolize the most distant, most remote, and least accessible places on Earth. The places they might only hear legendary tales about, but, never physically see.
So the phrase multitude of isles is basically a geographical shorthand for totality, for everything.
Precisely. It symbolizes the utter universality of his reign. The psalmist is leaving absolutely no region, no domain, and no sphere of life untouched by divine authority. This declaration was, it was revolutionary in a world filled with localized deities.
Sure, gods of the mountain, gods of the river.
Gods of the harvest. The king of Psalm 97 just shatters that notion. His authority covers every corner of the planet, every nation, every market, every law, and every life. The geographical language is there to stress the comprehensive nature of his present control.
And if that premise is true, if he is in total universal control, then the proper response isn't fear or despair, it's joy.
It's joy and gladness.
Why is that response so necessary when you're confronting absolute power? I mean, usually that's terrifying.
Because we have been conditioned by history to fear absolute power.
Yeah.
Every single time a human being gains total control, whether they're an emperor, a dictator, a corporate titan, that power inevitably becomes corrupted. It becomes tyrannical.
We cringe, we scheme, we tremble.
We do. But the ultimate insight here is that when the one true God, whose nature is defined by perfect holiness and justice, as we're about to see when he reigns, the only sane response is profound, liberating joy.
Okay.
We rejoice because we realize the apparent chaos we see in the world is not the ultimate reality. It's all contained, it's judged, it's ordered within his sovereign plan. The relief is just immense.
It provides the ultimate intellectual and emotional anchor. If God is king, I don't need to panic about the daily whims of human institutions.
Exactly.
Yeah, the sources connect this present reality to its final visible fulfillment in the New Testament, reminding us that this is a promise moving toward a guarantee.
It does. The present truth of Psalm 97 is the foundation of faith now, but we see it culminating in a universal, undeniable public declaration in Revelation 19.6.
What does that say?
And I heard, as it were, the voice of a great multitude, and as the voice of many waters, and the voice of mighty thunderings, saying, Alleluia, for the Lord God omnipotent reigneth.
That is the moment of consummation. The multitude is shouting, Alleluia, because the absolute authority that was believed by faith in Psalm 97 is now seen by everyone.
Right. The shift from present reality to visible, public reality is complete.
And that transition is highly practical for the listener.
Oh, absolutely. This deep dive into Psalm 97 equips you to live today with the confidence of that future reality. Our culture is characterized by anxiety, the feeling that things are rapidly spinning out of our control.
Politically, financially, personally.
All of it. Knowing that the eternal Father, the creator of all things, is not only aware but is actively governing and reigning, well, that provides the deepest possible anchor for your soul. If he governs the far-flung multitude of isles, he is certainly governing the specific details of your schedule and your personal struggle this week.
Yeah.
It transforms anxiety into patient, joyful anticipation.
That is a truth that requires time to sink in. It's the difference between, I don't know, navigating a hurricane alone and being anchored to the ocean floor.
Well said.
Okay, moving into the description of God's rule in the next two verses, the picture becomes, well, it gets significantly more dramatic. It introduces elements of both impenetrable mystery and consuming power. It's an awesome picture.
It is a deliberate effort by the psalmist to instill awe. We move from the foundational truth of his reign to the character of the reigning king. Listen to the verses.
Okay.
Clouds and darkness around about him. Righteousness and judgment are the habitation of his throne. A fire goeth before him, and burneth up his enemies round about.
I want to focus first on that sense of transcendence and mystery. Clouds and darkness are round about him. That imagery is pervasive throughout Scripture, the Shekinah glory, the covering of Sinai. What is that telling us about his presence?
It speaks directly to his transcendence and his unknowability. The clouds and darkness serve as a curtain, telling us that God is vastly beyond our full comprehension. We are finite. He is infinite. As Isaiah reminds us, his ways are higher than our ways, his thoughts higher than our thoughts. He can't be fully mapped or analyzed or reduced to a manageable concept by the human mind. There must always remain a layer of awesome, impenetrable mystery when the creature approaches the Creator.
It prevents us from the arrogance of thinking we can fully figure God out.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the psalmist doesn't stop with mystery. He uses that darkness as a dramatic contrast to immediately clarify the absolute foundation of his rule. While we can't figure him out fully, we can know the absolute nature of his throne.
Righteousness and judgment are the habitation of his throne. This is the certainty within the mystery.
That is the crucial, necessary balance for the believer. Though the peripheral ways he works may be obscured by the clouds and darkness, those confusing events in our lives and in history, the foundation of his throne is not hidden. It's built on two unshakable pillars: righteousness and judgment.
Let's define those two words, because they are often used interchangeably, but in this context, they carry distinct weight, don't they?
They absolutely do. Righteousness refers to God's inherent moral perfection, his flawless goodness, his absolute adherence to what is right. It means his character is pure.
Okay.
Judgment, or justice, refers to the active governmental application of that righteousness in the world. So, his throne is established on moral perfection, and he actively governs by the standards of that perfection.
So his actions are never arbitrary, never capricious.
Never. They are perfectly right and perfectly just, even when the clouds prevent us from seeing the full rationale. This distinction allows us to maintain trust even when our view is obscured.
So we trust the character even when we can't trace the path. But immediately following that description of the throne's foundation, we get the active power.
Yeah.
A fire goeth before him, and burneth up his enemies round about. This is the consuming fire.
This is the third element of his presence. His holiness is dynamic and purifying. The fire imagery symbolizes his inability to tolerate sin or opposition. This fire isn't just destructive, it's actively purifying, destroying all that stands against his moral perfection.
It's an immediate, purifying presence.
Right. It clears the way for the manifestation of his kingdom. And the sources, they connect this powerful, consuming reality directly to the New Testament, making it clear this definition of God is consistent across both testaments.
So what's the connection?
The warning is clear and profound. Hebrews 12:29 brings this ancient imagery right into the Christian context, stating plainly, "For our God is a consuming fire."
Wow.
This verse forces us to hold both the comfort and the necessary challenge of approaching such a holy God.
So if the fire is consuming and the foundation is perfect justice, what's a practical takeaway for the listener today? How do we apply that reverence in our daily spiritual approach?
It means we must approach God with profound, deep reverence, an awe that prevents casualness or, flippancy. We must take immense comfort in knowing his throne is established on perfect justice. We never have to worry that he will be unfair or unethical. But simultaneously, we must never forget the consuming fire of his holiness, which defines our sin as a serious, eternal matter. This tension justice demanding punishment, holiness demanding separation, that's the context that magnifies the grace we receive through Jesus Christ.
So Christ absorbed that consuming fire on the cross.
Yes, bridging the gap between our sinfulness and his holiness. If he wasn't perfectly just, grace would be unnecessary. But because he is perfectly holy, grace is our absolute everything.
That is a deep realization. The magnitude of his holiness truly sets the measure for the magnitude of his grace. It demands a response of both awe and, profound gratitude.
Absolutely.
Okay, we shift now from the internal character of his throne to the physical, external manifestation of his power in the world. The psalmist is using spectacular, almost cosmic-level imagery here to describe God's dramatic arrival.
This section emphasizes that when the King of the universe chooses to display his power, it is unmistakable and absolute. The verses read, "His lightnings enlightened the world. The earth saw and trembled. The hills melted like wax at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the Lord of the whole earth."
His lightnings enlightened the world. This isn't a small flashlight. This is immediate universal illumination. There's no corner of the earth, no shadowy government, no secret meeting that can hide from the lightnings of his presence.
The lightnings are the ultimate sign of raw, uncontainable power, and they guarantee undeniable presence. They illuminate the entire world, ensuring that when God acts as judge, no one can claim ignorance.
And the result is immediate and global. The earth sees and it trembles.
It trembles in proper awe. This is the sheer, overwhelming, irresistible nature of the Lord on full display.
And then we get that famous poetic hyperbole, the hills melted like wax. In every culture, mountains are the symbols of permanence. They are the definition of strength, stability, immovability.
And that is precisely why the psalmist uses them. The sources emphasize that this is a poetic illustration designed to obliterate the concept of permanence in the face of God.
Right.
The insight is this: nothing, no matter how solid, how strong, or how permanent it seems by human, geologic, or political standards, can stand or hold its ground before the presence of the Lord of the whole earth.
So if the everlasting hills melt,
What human construct, what military might, or what financial institution can possibly resist him?
this places all earthly systems into immediate perspective. We put so much faith in the solidity of things, our national security, the stock market, our health, our career. But the psalmist essentially calls them all temporary wax.
They are completely ephemeral when compared to ultimate reality. And this isn't some isolated poetic flourish either. The commentary pointed out the prophetic parallel in Micah 1.4, which uses almost identical language when describing God's intervention and judgment.
What does Micah say?
"And the mountains shall be molten under him, and the valleys shall be cleft, as wax before the fire, and as the waters that are poured down a steep place."
So that consistency just confirms the imagery. This is the standard biblical picture of God's overwhelming transformative power.
It is.
So how does this melting hill imagery provide proper perspective for the listener facing, daily mountainous pressure?
It's the essential shift in perspective. The challenges you face, the towering deadlines, the seemingly insurmountable financial pressure, the interpersonal crises, they often feel like mountains in your life.
Oh, for sure.
But this psalm forces you to recognize that you serve the God before whom literal geological mountains melt. This realization drastically minimizes the perceived strength of your current problems relative to the supreme strength of your God.
Mm-hmm.
And, what's more, it gives you a profound glimpse of the awesome, undeniable, and total power that will be displayed at the final, visible return of Christ. When he intervenes, it is not a quiet spiritual event. It is a cosmic, geological reordering that confirms his absolute authority.
It effectively transforms the mountains of worry we carry into something temporary, fluid, and entirely subject to the king.
Well said.
Following this explosive demonstration of power, the earth trembling, the hills melting, the psalmist moves to a public global proclamation that is both moral and universal.
Yes, verse 6 is a powerful statement of universal revelation. The heavens declare his righteousness, and all the people see his glory.
This means God's perfect moral character is not some, esoteric doctrine known only to a few mystics. It's an open, universal truth proclaimed by the very cosmos and seen by everyone.
It is the final unveiling. The heavens declare means this truth is broadcast universally and critically. At the time describing this psalm, God's glory isn't hidden, it is seen by all the people.
It removes all ambiguity.
All doubt and all future debate about who God is and the absolute perfection of his justice. This is the public court where the evidence is undeniable.
Now, this sounds similar to Psalm 19, which we know is a declaration of God's glory through nature. But the source material draws a very important distinction between those two declarations.
This distinction is vital for understanding the psalmist's intent. Think about Psalm 19.1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork.
Right.
That refers to what theologians call general revelation. Creation constantly testifies to God as the glorious creator. The sun rises, the stars move, and we know there must be an architect.
But Psalm 97.6 shifts the focus from the architect to the judge.
Exactly. Psalm 97.6 speaks of a specific time when his righteousness as judge will be just as clearly and universally revealed as his glorious creator. If Psalm 19 is God's handwriting on the wall saying, I am the architect, Psalm 97.6 is the public decree saying, I am the judge.
So power is always subservient to principle in God's universe.
That's it. It's not just that he is powerful, it's that his power is flawlessly righteous.
And what does this supreme confidence in universal revealed justice offer the listener who is constantly bombarded by news of human injustice and inequality?
It allows us to live with supreme confidence and immense patience. When we see wickedness prevailing, corruption unpunished, and wrong never corrected by human systems, we can rest. We know a day is coming when God's perfect righteousness will be put on public display for every soul to see.
And every single wrong will be made right.
Big and small. It validates the moral order that the world often denies or ignores. We can live justly now, knowing that ultimate accountability is guaranteed by the king who actively reigns.
Okay, so the scene shifts dramatically in verse 7, contrasting the awesome power we've just described with the complete emptiness of anything that tries to steal his place. This is a very sharp pivot.
It's a declaration of war against all rivals and a declaration of their guaranteed failure. Confounded be all they that serve graven images, that boast themselves of idols. Worship him, all ye gods.
Let's focus on the first part. Confounded be all they that serve graven images. The word confounded is strong. It means to be utterly put to shame, defeated, humiliated. Why is shame the ultimate result of idolatry?
Because idols are intrinsically empty. They're graven images, things manufactured by human labor, based on human fantasy, and utterly impotent in reality. The greatest tragedy of idolatry is the trust placed in something fundamentally powerless. When the true Lord of the whole earth arrives, and the idol fails to protect or reward or deliver, as it inevitably must, the devotee is left standing exposed, their misplaced trust resulting in profound public shame.
So the message is a blunt and timeless warning. If you put your ultimate trust, your devotion, your affection in anything created, anything other than the king, that thing will ultimately fail you and bring you shame.
Absolutely. But the most stunning part of this verse, as noted in the sources, is the direct command that follows. Worship him, all ye gods.
That is a direct command to supernatural entities. The psalmist is demanding worship not just from humans, but from beings beyond the human sphere. How should the listener understand the use of gods here? Is this polytheism?
The sources make it clear that in the sophisticated biblical worldview, this is not an acknowledgement of competing equally divine beings. No. These gods were understood as the demonic spiritual powers, or angelic beings, that stood behind the physical idols and the systems of falsehood built around them.
Wow.
The psalmist is declaring that even these malicious, powerful spiritual opponents, the architects of lies and deception, are utterly subject to the Lord. They're commanded, like subservient, conquered enemies, to bow before him.
That significantly raises the stakes. The king isn't just powerful enough to destroy wood and stone, he commands the spiritual forces, the principalities and powers that animate human evil.
And this command finds its ultimate New Testament explanation and fulfillment in the person of Jesus Christ. We look to Philippians 2:10-11, where the supremacy of Christ is declared.
Yes, say it for us.
That at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father.
Things in heaven, so good angels, things in earth, humans, and things under the earth.
Demonic beings and spiritual powers. It's the ultimate declaration of universal subjugation. The command in Psalm 97 is fulfilled in the person of Christ.
It confirms that every single spiritual power, regardless of its position or perceived strength in our lives, falls into a category that must ultimately bend the knee.
Which gives us immense confidence when facing spiritual opposition or when feeling overwhelmed by systemic evil.
Now, to bring this home to the modern believer, we might feel safe saying we don't carve wooden idols, but the concept of idolatry is incredibly insidious in the modern heart. How does this verse apply to us today?
Well, we must remember the classic definition of an idol is anything that takes God's rightful place in our hearts, demanding ultimate loyalty, trust, or deriving our deepest identity.
Okay, so in the modern context.
That could be the absolute pursuit of success, the worship of professional achievement, the ultimate reliance on financial security, the devotion to a particular political party, or even the subtle elevation of self-reliance above dependence on God.
So if I find my worth, my security, or my peace, primarily in the stock market, in my career title, or in my own capabilities, I am setting up a modern idol.
Precisely. And this verse serves as the necessary stark reminder. Every single one of those created things will ultimately fail you and bring you shame. The market will crash, the title will expire, self-reliance will falter under the weight of genuine crisis. Only the one true God is worthy of that ultimate devotion, because only he is supremely exalted and will never fail.
A profound challenge to look inward and identify the wax we are currently relying on.
Right.
Okay, we've seen the earth tremble, the idolaters confounded, but now the psalmist turns to the response of God's own faithful people when they hear of these righteous judgments.
And the response is the antithesis of the fear displayed by the earth. Verse 8 describes their reaction. Zion heard and was glad, and the daughters of Judah rejoiced because of thy judgments, O Lord.
It seems counterintuitive to rejoice in judgment. Why do the people of God, Zion, the daughters of Judah, find gladness in divine judgment?
They rejoice because judgment, in this context, signifies the end of wickedness and the public, visible establishment of perfect righteousness. This is not spiteful joy or vengeance. It is the deep, profound relief of vindication.
Oh, okay.
It is the celebration of moral order being fully restored, of goodness finally triumphing over systemic evil, oppression, and corruption. When God steps in and sets the world right, his people feel secure, restored, and comforted.
It's like the moment the cosmic balance beam, which had been leaning toward injustice on Earth, finally snaps back to true north forever.
That is exactly the sentiment, and we see this feeling mirrored in prophetic scripture. Recall Revelation 18:20, where heaven and God's holy apostles and prophets are called to rejoice over her wicked Babylon, for God has avenged you on her.
So the celebration is tied not to the suffering of the wicked.
No, but to the realization of God's perfect justice and the end of the system that opposed him. For us today, because Christ has already borne the penalty for our sin, we look forward to the day God sets all things right, and we can rejoice in his absolute perfect justice, knowing it brings ultimate peace to the world.
And the reason for this unshakable, non-contingent joy is articulated perfectly in the next verse, which hammers home the theme of supremacy one last time.
Verse 9 gives the ultimate, singular root cause for the saints' confidence. For thou, Lord, art high above all the earth. Thou art exalted far above all gods.
That is the definitive mic drop statement. He isn't just powerful. He is in a category entirely by himself. He is the ultimate sovereign.
Absolutely. The language is superlative and exclusionary. He is high above all the earth, establishing physical and governmental supremacy, and he is exalted far above all gods, establishing spiritual and ontological supremacy.
This is the truth that guarantees the joy and vindication of his people.
Yes, we do not serve a regional, limited, or temporary deity. We serve the King, who is literally beyond category. And linking this back to the New Testament, the sources emphasize this ultimate exaltation is perfectly reflected in the position of Christ after his resurrection.
Which is found where?
In Ephesians 1:21, which states that Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father, far above all principality and power and might and dominion, and every name that is named, not only in this world, but also in that which is to come.
Far above every name. That covers everything that we might fear or worship. Our confidence must therefore be rooted in serving the one who is exalted far above everything the world elevates. That knowledge, truly absorbed, grants us unshakable peace and boldness, especially when we feel overshadowed by the perceived strength of earthly powers or the weight of spiritual opposition.
It does.
We transition beautifully here from cosmic praise and grand declarations to highly practical personal instruction. If all those universal truths are real, how must you and I live today? This is the practical application of sovereignty.
Right. And verse 10 provides the moral litmus test and the necessary boundary for true faith and devotion. Ye that love the Lord hate evil. He preserveth the souls of his saints. He delivereth them out of the hand of the wicked.
The command establishes an inseparable relationship. A genuine love for God must result in a genuine active hatred for evil. You can't claim devotion to the king while embracing the corruption he stands against.
That is the inescapable moral logic. If we truly love what is holy, pure, and good, which is God, the ultimate standard, we are compelled to intensely detest what is corrupt, sinful, and wicked.
You can't hold both.
Any attempt to hold devotion to God in one hand and an embrace or tolerance of evil in the other nullifies the claim of love. This is the point where theology moves out of the theoretical and into immediate, daily decisions regarding moral clarity.
And that hatred of evil must be defined broadly, right? Not just as grand moral stands. It includes the small, subtle evils that creep into our thoughts, our words, and our silent compromises.
Absolutely. And the New Testament reinforces this timeless necessity, calling for this active moral rejection. We see it clearly in Romans 12:9. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good.
Abhor, that's such a strong word.
It implies recoiling with disgust and intense detestation. We are commanded to turn away dramatically from evil and cling passionately with active commitment to the good.
So the demonstration of our love is not merely emotional warmth or singing songs. It's an active, ongoing, and visible moral alignment with God's perfect justice. And if we choose that difficult path, there's an immediate, magnificent promise of divine protection.
Yes, there is a double promise for his saints, those set apart by faith. First, God preserveth or guards their eternal souls. That is the ultimate security.
That's the big one.
That's the big one, meaning their standing with him is protected, regardless of earthly trial. Second, he delivereth them out of the hand of the wicked. This speaks to God intervening in temporal life, either by giving them the strength to endure wicked influences, providing escape, or giving them the moral clarity to stand firm against the power of systemic wickedness.
This means our faith is not just about a future hope. It's about protection, guidance, and moral empowerment right now in the midst of a challenging, compromising world.
Correct. The application here is vital. Your faith must be practical. It is demonstrated daily by actively turning away from evil, not just in public acts, but in your private thoughts, your small choices, your reactions to pressure. This requires active self-examination.
And as we strive for that,
As we strive to demonstrate this love through moral clarity, we hold on to the powerful, guaranteed promise that God is our protector, guarding our eternal core and strengthening us against both external and internal pressures.
immediately following the command to hate evil, the psalm delivers one of the most comforting assurances in all Scripture, using a farming metaphor to guarantee future blessing for those who walk the path of the righteous.
The guarantee is structurally absolute. Verse 11 says, Light is sown for the righteous, and gladness for the upright in heart.
The imagery of the seed analogy is incredibly stabilizing. Light and gladness are not things we have to desperately manufacture or try to conjure up through sheer force of will every day. They have already been actively sown into the structure of our future by God himself.
The phrasing is everything here. The action is in the passive voice. Light is sown. This means it was planted by God. It is a divine investment. Light represents clarity, spiritual understanding, truth, and God's active favor.
And gladness.
Gladness points to the deep, abiding joy that is rooted in salvation and not dependent on fleeting external circumstances. The key theological truth here is the guaranteed harvest.
This guarantee is essential because the reality of the believer's life often involves seasons of profound darkness, confusion, or sorrow, where the presence of light and gladness seems entirely absent or, theoretical.
That's precisely the tension the seed metaphor addresses. We are living between the planting and the reaping. The harvest is not immediate, and there will be difficult seasons, the waiting, the winter, the struggle. But the divine planting itself is guaranteed. Even if the righteous are walking through the most difficult season, the seed of light and joy is already in the ground, and the harvest is fixed by God's promise. Present, confusing circumstances cannot negate future divine promises.
The journey itself is into increasing light, isn't it? Our walk is not a random stumble, but a progression toward guaranteed brightness.
That's the trajectory. The sources reference Proverbs 4.18 to beautifully reinforce this idea. But the path of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day.
That phrase, shineth more and more unto the perfect day, suggests a divine directional pull. Our life, while filled with individual struggles, has an overall trajectory toward increasing favor, clarity, and joy, culminating in the perfect day of Christ's return.
It solidifies the practical application for the listener. When you encounter moments of confusion, doubt, or overwhelming difficulty, you do not have to succumb to despair. You must trust the covenant structure that God has already sown light and joy into your future simply because you're counted among the righteous. You are walking toward the harvest. Even if you currently feel lost in the shadow of a dark season, your hope is written into the blueprint of your life.
The song concludes exactly where it began, bringing us full circle to the theme of rejoicing, but with a specific, final, defining focus for our faith.
The conclusion provides the ultimate, explicit object of our devotion and our joy. Rejoice in the Lord, ye righteous, and give thanks at the remembrance of his holiness.
The focus is highly specific. Rejoice in the Lord. Not in the temporary deliverance, not in the money, not in the career advancement, not even in the guaranteed harvest of light, but in God himself.
Yeah.
In the King.
Our joy must be radically God-centered. If our joy is contingent on anything external, our circumstances, our possessions, our health, it is inherently fragile and can be stripped away in an instant.
Sure.
If our joy is found exclusively in God, the eternal King who reigns over all and never changes, then that joy is unshakable and infinite. He is the perfect, ultimate, and everlasting object of our delight.
And the final call is to focus our thanks specifically on his holiness, his perfect purity and separateness from sin. That seems like an intimidating target for gratitude.
It is the profound center of our worship. We thank God for his holiness because it is the definition of his character, his absolute moral purity. As we discussed earlier, this creates the ultimate paradox of the Christian life. God's holiness is precisely what makes our sins so serious and demands the consuming fire of judgment. Yet because of Jesus Christ, we are not only spared that judgment, but we are welcomed into a relationship where we can stand before this holy God and actually give thanks for that very holiness.
It is the ultimate expression of grace to be able to approach the consuming fire not with paralyzing dread, but with deep, unreserved gratitude.
Precisely. And this relationship with the holy God demands a reciprocal response, echoing the New Testament call in 1 Peter 1:15-16. But as he which hath called you is holy, so be ye holy in all manner of conversation, because it is written, be ye holy, for I am holy.
So our response is twofold.
It is. First, thanks for the relationship purchased by grace. And second, that relationship inspires us to pursue holiness in our own daily lives, reflecting the perfect character of the one in whom we rejoice.
That brings the vast cosmic declaration of a king who reigns and makes mountains melt right down to the personal standard of purity in our own hearts and minds. It's a masterful bridge between universal sovereignty and personal sanctity.
The psalmist successfully gives us a blueprint for living anchored lives. Lives ruled by the King, whose justice is certain and whose promises are guaranteed.
What a deep and substantial exploration of Psalm 97. We covered the revolutionary concept of the Lord's absolute present reign over the multitude of isles, and analyzed the tension between the mystery of the clouds and darkness and the certainty of his throne, which is founded entirely on righteousness and judgment. We saw the overwhelming power that makes mountains melt like wax, and learned that every spiritual power and every modern idol will ultimately be confounded and brought to shame.
And we then transitioned into the necessary Practical response to the righteous, that genuine love for God must manifest as an active abhorrence of evil. We rest assured in the guaranteed promise that light and gladness have already been sown into our future.
Right.
The entire psalm directs our joy away from the fleeting fragility of earthly circumstances and anchors it firmly in the enduring, perfect holiness of the Lord himself.
And now it's time to move these profound theological insights into direct, tangible action. Here are the 5 actionable steps you can take starting this week, drawn directly from the structure and commentary on Psalm 97.
Here are the practical steps and actions to take from this devotional deep dive.
Number 1.
First, practice profound joy as an act of faith. Anchor your peace, not in current events, but in the certain knowledge that the Eternal Father is in complete and sovereign control. When anxiety, fear, or a sense of being overwhelmed rises, make the conscious decision to speak this truth over your situation. The Lord reigneth. Let that fact be the source of your peace, not external outcomes.
2. Cultivate reverence and gratitude.
Yes. Approach God with awe, remembering his holiness is a consuming fire and his ways are transcendent. Use this reverence to amplify your daily gratitude for the grace received through Christ. Never allow your relationship with the King to become casual. Recognize the cost required to approach a perfectly just throne.
Number 3 is an interesting one. Conduct an idol audit.
Actively identify and turn away from anything, whether it's self-reliance, financial security, status, or career achievement, that has secretly usurped God's rightful place. Look for where you primarily derive your worth or security, and consciously divest that ultimate trust, recognizing that all idols ultimately bring shame when tested by reality.
Okay, 4. Demonstrate love by hating evil.
Implement the inseparable command from verse 10. Demonstrate your love for God practically by actively abhorring what is corrupt, sinful, and wicked. This starts small. Abhor the corrupt thought, reject the cynical or harmful word, and make a conscious decision to cleave passionately to what is pure and good in every area of your influence.
And finally, number 5.
Rest in the guaranteed harvest. Trust the divine promise that light clarity, favor, and gladness, deep joy, have already been sown for your future. If you are walking through a difficult or confusing season, refuse to let present circumstances dictate your future hope. Trust that God guarantees the planting and therefore guarantees the coming harvest.
That is structural, actionable faith right there. A comprehensive way to live anchored in sovereignty. And to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over this week, based on the reality of the overwhelming power we discussed. Given that literal mountains melt before him, what mountain of worry, self-reliance, crippling fear, or long-held resentment must you surrender to the Lord of the whole earth this week?
Contemplate that scale. If his power is cosmic, geological, and absolute, then your personal burdens are surely manageable by him.
Thank you for allowing us to guide you through this extensive deep dive. We hope you feel thoroughly equipped and anchored in the enduring reality of God's sovereign reign. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye for now.
This devotional deep dive was proudly brought to you by the You Need Faith in Jesus team.